WiSP Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Welcome to the WiSP Sports Desk here at WiSP Sports. I'm Chris Stafford, and I'll be joined, as usual, by Nancy Gillen, who I think is in the UK this week.
Hello. Yes, I'm in England now. I'm back home.
Yeah, you do have quite a bit of travelling to do, and but I think since we spoke last time, you did actually stay put.
Yeah, so I have been in England for about 2 weeks, which I think is a record, really. But it's all it's getting quite quiet over Christmas, so there's less things to cover, which is good because a bit of recovery before. Obviously, 2020 is going to be a really big year, so a bit of recovery before that all starts happening.
Yeah, I'm sure you're glad of that. But you do still keep an eye very closely on all the news and write for Inside the Games. And it's a story I picked up that you had written about tennis, wheelchair tennis. Well, we're going to kick off because we've got quite a few stories this week, as usual. Plus, we want to go actually start talking about the year-end awards at the end of the show as well. So that's something that we do here at the end of each year over the holidays. We announce the year-end awards. So we'll get to that at the end of the show. Don't let me forget, Nancy, because you know what an airhead I am.
I'll try my best.
All right, well, let's kick off with that wheelchair tennis story because there's quite a record between this Dutch duo that won the, do you say the UNIQLO Wheelchair Doubles Masters? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I think that's how I pronounce it. I'm not too sure, but I'd say UNIQLO. I'd say it like that.
Well, they won this title, the doubles title, which is really impressive because they overcame. You know, we've had Jordan Wiley, the British player. We've had her on WiSP Sports in the past, and they were on the losing end of that duel, weren't they? Did you follow the Masters then, or you just had to report on the win?
Oh no, yeah, I was I was covering the whole tournament really. I think it ended today, and I've have a day off today, so I didn't. I've just seen who. No, sorry, it ended yesterday. But I've just seen who won the singles, the men's and the women's singles. And it was Didi de Groot, who was part of that doubles pair there. She also won the singles tournament as well. And I think it's been a really successful year for her. She's actually done a Grand Slam. So she's won Wimbledon, the US Open, the Australian Open, and the French Open. And now she's also got a singles and a doubles title from the Masters. So she's kind of completely dominated wheelchair tennis this year.
That's fantastic, yeah. And what good form going into an Olympic year as well.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the perfect time to be winning everything, really. Yeah, she is number one, world number one as well. So her rankings do reflect how well she's done so far.
Well, I think she deserves. We do like our sound effects here on Podbean Live, which we don't use with the recorded shows. So maybe we need to start doing that. Adds a little bit of entertainment value because we like to celebrate these athletes. You know, they're so, you know, I've always said this, Nancy, they're champions in every sport, world champions, World Cup champions in every sport. And so often it's just the Olympians that get the credit.
Yeah, and I think as well, kind of probably not too many people have heard of like de Groot and kind of maybe sports that aren't really in the limelight as much. But, you know, it's been a really, she's had such a good year. So I think it's just good to celebrate her achievements.
Yeah, good for her. And we should point out that that's her fourth doubles gold medal at the Masters as well. That's just in the doubles. Yeah,
she's actually managed to. So her partner there, Aniek van Koot, it's actually the first time that they've won a doubles together. But again, they've also won quite a lot together this year as well. So I imagine they're probably going to stay coupled up for the Olympics, the Paralympics as well.
For next year, yeah, I would imagine so with that kind of form.
Yeah,
and we should point, and that a tournament took place in Orlando, Florida. So very smart to have a nice warm venue for it this time of the year.
Definitely.
All right, and as you mentioned, in the singles, she won the singles as well. So it's been a fantastic year for her. Good for her. All right, we're going to move on to somebody else who's on a winning streak at the moment, and that's the American show jumper Adrienne Sternlicht, because she's won 2 World Cup qualifiers just now, which is pretty amazing. They were back to back in Thermal in California, and then she went on down the road, literally, to Las Vegas, where she won the other World Cup qualifier. Now, Adrienne, I got to meet at the World Equestrian Games last year. That was her first championship competition at the World Games, and she was really impressive. And this year, of course, she's on cracking form. She's just got a new horse that she's been riding for a couple of months, Benny's Legacy, that she took over from the Irish rider, Jenny Rankin. And to go on and already qualify for 2 with 2 wins. She's going to be, I think, 3rd in the rankings. That's the North American League, and there's an East Coast and a West Coast sub-league of those standings. She's currently in 3rd place now after those back-to-back wins, and right behind BZ Madden. And the top 6 from those standings at the end of the 2019-2020 season, World Cup season, which is in indoor shows, they will go on to the final, the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup final, which actually is going to be in Vegas at the Thomas and Mack Center in April. And that's something that was on her agenda. She had talked about it with her coach, McLean Ward, about aiming over the next 5 months, with that big goal being to go to Vegas for the final. So she's well on her way there, and there's more competitions to come. And of course, Florida Circuit starts up after Christmas as well. So we'll see what else Adrienne can produce. But yeah, she's on cracking form at the moment. She's absolutely on fire. So I think she definitely deserves. Congratulations, Adrienne. I think I have to talk to her for the Horse Show podcast as well, and see what else is going on in her life. But that's the world of show jumping. Now we're going to get serious and talk about something that really just kind of underruns international sport. This doping scandal with Russia, Nancy, and WADA have just recommended this 4-year sanction against Russia. It's really sad that this is like underrunning the whole of international sport, because it doesn't go away, does it?
Yeah, and it's been ongoing for just so long, really. And I think, it kind of sometimes seems like step forwards are being made, and then kind of everything goes backwards again. And this is kind of this recommendation that they're sanctioned for 4 years kind of stems from the fact that some of the data that they picked up, that WADA picked up from the Moscow laboratory, was tampered with. So that was kind of one of the examples of when, there seemed to be progress being made, and then the news came out that it seems like a lot of this data has been kind of tampered with, which obviously kind of, is not a good thing to do, because it kind of suggests that even if, WADA can't test it accurately, because it could just end up being fake anyway. So yeah, what they've recommended is quite hard.
Yeah, well, not only is it affecting the ban.
Yeah.
Yeah, because not only is there 4-year ban, but they're actually banning Russia from hosting any international competitions, aren't they?
Yeah, and I tweeted yesterday or the day before that this year alone I've been to Russia 3 times for sporting events. They're really, really kind of hot on hosting sporting events at the moment, and for a lot of federations as well, kind of a lot of the time they're the only option as well, really, because they're the only country that want to do it and kind of like financially are able to do so and have the facilities. So it would be a massive blow, I think, if they had events taken off them, or in the future couldn't bid for events. And there's there's been quite a few organisers of certain ones. I think there's the Ice Hockey Championships in 2022. And the guy from that has come out and said we're still hosted, like, how there's no way they're going to take it off us, but I mean, it's not down to him. So that's caused quite a lot of anger, really. I think another key point is that there won't be a blanket ban for all Russian athletes, which I know some athletes have been suggesting. But we were discussing this in the office yesterday, and I think it would be quite unfair just to say every single Russian athlete would be banned, because you could have, say, a tennis player who like moved maybe to America like 15 years ago for training camps, and hasn't been involved in the Russian setup at all. Has coaches from different countries and so on. Hasn't even been home. If an athlete like that was banned, I think that would be really unfair. So at the moment, the International Olympic Committee are going against a blanket ban of all athletes, which I think is probably more fair than kind of just, completely banning anything to do with Russia from the sporting world, really.
Yeah, well, there's only one thing we can add to that.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
it's
else
not great
can you
news.
say?
Yeah.
It's not, and as you said, this has been running for such a long time now. I don't know if you saw that documentary that was it Icarus? Am I thinking
Icarus,
the
yeah.
right name? Yeah. That was an amazing program, a documentary looking at the doping situation in the Russian laboratories. Did you see that?
I did, yeah. Funnily enough, one of my former colleagues, someone that used to work at Inside the Games, he's got a cameo appearance in it, because there's when the news breaks, he was with Bark at the time, so he's trying to get a quote off Bark in the documentary. But yeah, it's been something that like Inside the Games has always kind of been at the forefront of, and when I joined, it had been going on for so long, really. And the Icarus documentary, I think, is a lot of people have watched that, and that's kind of a lot of my friends have watched it, and that's kind of where a lot of the knowledge of it has come from. So that was really good. That's a really good documentary. Yeah, if anyone hasn't watched it, they should definitely watch that.
Yeah, it was very insightful. That was, and I think that was on Netflix. I'm not sure, but if you Google Icarus and want to really dig into Russian doping scandals, then that is an eye-opener. All right, we're going to turn to skiing now. Some good news about the quality in skiing that you have there from the federation.
So this is a council decision to include a minimum of 3 women on their council, and this is last week when we talked about federations at the highest level, they didn't have a lot of women on their board. This is kind of a way of fixing that, I suppose. And at the moment, there's only 2 women on the council, so they're going to have to. But both already sit on them because they're Secretary General and the athletes representative. So there aren't actually any formally elected female members on the council. So they're going to have to have add at least one more, and then I presume they're probably going to try and get more elected. But it's quite interesting with the Ski Federation, because their president has announced that he's going to stand down. And he has been there he's been president for like over 20 years. He's been there for a really, really long time. And they're going to decide the new president next year. So they haven't put out kind of who's going for it. No one has really started registering interest as such. But it would be interesting to see, maybe we could have a female president come into that. Because the Secretary General, Sarah Lewis, she is currently, on the council and quite high up. So maybe we'll see her going for the presidency role.
Yeah, good for her. That's really good news. We've seen a few, and there are, Secretary Generals, female Secretary Generals in federations, but this is a step in the right direction. And as you mentioned there, the athletes representative is Hannah Kearney, another woman, and they're opening the door to more. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but some sports refer to women as ladies.
Yeah,
so it's the ladies slalom, the ladies downhill. Well, FIS, the International Skiing Federation, have changed that to women. I noticed that this season. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did notice that, because last season they always refer to it as ladies, and I'd always change it just because I really hate the term ladies. I noticed actually looking this year that I was like, oh, I don't have to change that. They've adopted that themselves, which is, I think some people might think that's a bit trivial and stupid, but I do think that is kind of the language that people use is quite important, really.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think FIS are moving in the right direction, so we'll give them a little applause here. Well done to them. Now, we did have another story about Russian doping, because there was a ban confirmed by the Court of Arbitration for Sport recently about 2 Russian athletes. This is over the London 2012 retests. And I meant to slot this in earlier, but it just yet another story. I mean, they just keep turning up.
Yeah, and I think the kind of maybe worrying thing is that they're from the London 2012 Olympics, so they were their samples were retested back in 2017, so it's just kind of taken this long for the appeal to go to CAS and CAS to confirm that they are banned. But it is kind of, a bit, when you're kind of looking back to an Olympics that took place 7 years ago, and results are still kind of being wiped and medals are still being reallocated there, it is quite kind of saddening, really. But yeah, in that case it was Julia Gushchina and Anna Nazarova. So Gushchina was a member of the 4x400 meter relay team, which earned silver at London 2012. So they were stripped of their medals back in 2017, because I think another member of their team was also tested positive for a banned substance. So yeah, it's kind of just quite disheartening, I think, when you've got something popping up from 7 years ago and athletes are still getting banned from that.
There's only one thing to say.
Yeah, I agree.
As we move on now to some soccer news from the African Cup of Nations.
Yeah, this is quite an interesting one, because it also ties into the bidding race for the 2023 Women's World Cup, which is kind of so next month all the countries that want the FIFA Women's World Cup will have to submit their final bids. So they have until December the 13th, so just over 2 weeks. So kind of they're probably all making last minute arrangements, and it's going to be really interesting to see what countries actually submit the bid. But it's interesting because South Africa are wanting the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup, so they're kind of bidding for that. But because of that, they've turned down hosting the Women's African Cup of Nations, which is taking place next year. So originally Congo were hosting it, but they withdrew in summer because of financial reasons. So the Confederation of African Football are kind of quite desperately looking for a new host, because the tournament is taking place next year, so it's quite soon. And they need a host. So they kind of, I think, turned to South Africa, I'm presuming, because obviously South Africa, they've hosted the Men's World Cup. They had a women's team at the World Cup this summer. They've probably got facilities and they're able to do it at short notice compared to probably most other countries. But they've turned it down, and they've said because they're fully focusing on the 2023 Women's World Cup. So they will not be hosting it. So I think that's quite bad news for the Confederation of African Football, because they're going to have to keep looking. But I'm not too sure about how wise that decision is, just purely because I think you wouldn't say South Africa would be favourites to host the Women's World Cup, so maybe they've turned down quite a good opportunity there. But also because I don't know if it would maybe help their bid if they can put on a tournament last minute, and if it is successful, then I think that would be quite a positive factor in their bid for the World Cup. But obviously they've just decided they're just going to put all their interest into the World Cup in 2023.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Last year, I think it was held in Ghana, and there were just 8 teams, and they were going to bump it up next year to 12 teams as well. But obviously there's interest in the sport. But as you say, it's a shame, because that might have boded well for them if they had hosted that. Put them in good light. I wouldn't have thought it done their credentials any harm at all, but there we are. We'll watch that story and see if we can bring you some news on who will win that bid now that it's open to tender.
Hi, my name is Angelica Delgado, and I am an American judoka competing in the under 52 kilogram division for the United States. I am a proud WiSP ambassador. I believe women in sports is extremely important, teaches young women from a young age to believe in themselves, to have great self-confidence, and especially this Olympic movement. You can see great athletes such as Simone Biles, Kayla Harrison, for example, Marty Malloy, which is also a friend of mine. These are great female role models, strong women in sports. My social media account is at Juji, JUJI_Angie, ANGIE. And I just want to thank you so much for listening.
Teqball. I
Yes.
seem to see that popping up all the time inside the games. What's this new sport? Tell us about. Well, it's not
So-
that new. It's new to me.
Well, it is relatively new. I think it was kind of it's quite different to a lot of sports because it kind of revolves around an invention, basically. So these guys from Hungary have invented a table. It's kind of like table football, and it's curved to kind of make it more interesting. And you essentially, it's kind of like table tennis but football. So you're like juggling the ball and then onto the table and then to the people on the other side. So it's quite, it was, I think, developed around 2 years ago, and it's kind of on the rise. Like a lot of professional footballers now have it in their houses. They have it I know they have it at St George's Park, which is the England football team's like set up. So the men and women like use that for training. Like it's quite good for developing your technical skills, I think. So that, and I'm going to their World Championships the weekend after next. So that will be really interesting. But it's I think because it's a relatively new sport and there's no real kind of, traditions or anything, I think they're really kind of pushing that it's a game for everyone, and men and women are kind of, equal in terms of playing it. And when I've seen it before, it's mixed teams always. It's always like men and women playing each other because it's something that it's a sport that anyone could play really. There's no kind of physicality involved in it, so that's quite a positive aspect of it. But the International Teqball Federation have kind of been recently kind of just confirming their dedication almost to kind of equality in sport. So they signed, it's called the Brighton plus Helsinki Declaration on Women and Sport, which was first established in 1994. And that just kind of like works towards making sure that sport is fair, and fully inclusive of women and girls. So they signed that, and it just basically commits them to making sure that women and girls can play Teqball freely and safely. And then they've also become a member of the, I'll just get the name here because it's quite a long name, a member of the Association for International Sport for All. So that's also just making sure that Teqball is going to stay inclusive. But it's quite interesting because obviously it's a new sport, so they can, I think with some older sports you kind of have the old like entrenched ways almost, especially with football. That is probably why, you have kind of stuff where the pay is not equal and so on. But they're working quite hard, I think, to make sure that the sport is fully equal. So it's good news from Teqball.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting looking game. I think there's quite a business in making those tables because they're very, very specific, aren't they? Obviously, like any sport in terms of the curve and the dimensions. So there's a new business to be had there. Now, you mentioned that you're going to the World Championships. That's the third World Championships. It's in Budapest this year, right?
Yeah, Budapest, and I think that it should be a lot of fun. I'm not quite sure how it's like what the schedule's like and how they kind of do it and who qualifies for it. I'm not too clued up on it. I don't know if it's kind of anyone can just turn up and compete. I'm not sure, but I think it would be a lot of fun. And I know Ronaldinho, the Brazilian footballer, is going to be there, so I'm going to try and meet him.
Good for you. All right. Well, we'll hear about that after you get back from Budapest then, and that's month, December, which is right around the corner.
Yeah.
All right, moving right along here to UK athletics. Now, this is a shame. This story came out of UK athletics this week about Zara Hyde Peters, who will not be taking up her role as the new chief executive. Tell us a little bit about the story behind that.
Yeah, so that kind of came out earlier this week, and it's to do with her husband. So her husband, Mike Peters, they were both involved in a running club in the Midlands in Coventry. And so her husband was kind of coaching athletes at this running club. But in 2012, he'd been banned from teaching due to an inappropriate relationship with a 15-year-old schoolgirl. So that's not good. So obviously he was kind of coaching children and young people there. So she had been appointed as chief executive, but these allegations came out, I think it was by the Times, So these allegations came out, and then, you know, she was also involved in the club, and she was vice chair. So she could have very easily prevented her husband from being involved in that. And she's kind of been scrutinised because of it. And UK Athletics have just said that she's not going to be chief executive anymore. And I think it will probably also have an impact on the Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games, because she's a member of the board for that and a chair of the Athletes Advisory Committee. So I know BBC Sport have been kind of putting pressure on Birmingham 2022 to temporarily suspend Hyde Peters from that. And I think the Commonwealth Games Federation have as well. So I can't imagine Birmingham 2022 will say no, that they won't do that. So I imagine she'll also be suspended from her role there. It's not great news, because obviously it was quite good that she was becoming chief executive of UK Athletics, and athletics in this country is probably one of our most prominent sports. It's just a big shame, really. And it also kind of calls into question that the fact that you always think with these situations, why haven't they done their kind of in-depth research before and made sure that a kind of scandal like this doesn't happen? But, you know, it's not great publicity for them.
No, it certainly is not, and it's a shame, because, as you say, she's going to lose her position in governance, in sports governance, wherever she goes now. I think she'll probably have to rethink her career, and that's through no fault of her own.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing. It's kind of her husband's fault, really, that all this has happened. But hopefully, she'll be able to continue in sport, at least at some level.
Yeah, let's hope so. All right, we'll keep you posted if we get any updates there. Meanwhile, our final story this week comes from soccer, and from a soccer star that we love, Sam Kerr, the Australian and formerly Chicago Red Stars. She's now signed up for Chelsea. She was in Australia, in Perth, and she wanted to leave Perth, didn't she? She wanted to fly somewhere. We don't know where, because that's kept private. But in their wisdom, the airline Jetstar, apparently sticking to airline regulations and in abiding by the rules of the country that Sam was going to be flying to, stopped her flying. Tell us the story behind that.
Yeah, so I think when I had a look at I think you sent me the story, and I thought, she must, her passport must have been kind of severely damaged or ripped, or maybe water damage or something. But it's almost like the tiniest little rip. It's kind of like one of the pages has come away from the binding, essentially. She wasn't able to fly. I don't think she was told that she wasn't allowed to travel, which is just quite bizarre, really.
Grounded. How could they ground the Matilda star? She's got to get around the world. So what do? You just have to get a new passport, I suppose.
I suppose, yeah, but it just seems very, very... it seems ridiculous. It's just the smallest tear, and you think, probably a very famous person in Australia, you wouldn't want to be winding them up. Like the bad publicity from this, they would have been better off just letting her on the plane, I think.
Yeah, and then giving her a warning and saying, we'll let you go this time, but before you fly again, make sure that you actually need to get a new passport. All right. Well, as I said at the top of the show, there's one more item that we wanted to cover and start talking about, because we're getting to the end of the year, and that is our year-end awards, Nancy. This year, we're going to start looking at nominations, I think, and discussing over the next few episodes who should be nominated for either the Team of the Year, the Player of the Year, and the Coach of the Year. And I don't know about you, for the Team of the Year, I really can't get beyond the US women's soccer team. How can you?
Yeah, I agree. I don't really think you could look elsewhere, because it's kind of, the Women's World Cup is probably one of the biggest women's sporting events in the world. And kind of on the pitch, obviously they won the World Cup, but also I think what they're doing off the pitch with kind of the fight for equal pay and so on, if they're successful in that, it kind of affects women's sports everywhere. So I think I probably would have to agree. I might try and come up with a devil's advocate, but at the moment I can't think of one.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll ponder on that before the next episode. This will be, of course, same time next week, Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. That's 3 p.m. UK time. And we'll have more news from around the world of women's sports. But until then, they can, of course, always follow you on social media. Nancy, just remind everybody how they can.
It's Nancy_Gillen.
Okay. And we,
Twitter
of course...
handle.
That's your Twitter handle. And we, of course, are at WiSP Sports on your social media platforms. And if you'd like to contact us at any time with any comments, questions, suggestions for guests, so then you can do so by emailing info@wispsports.com. And check out the website because we've got something for everyone. We're the first and only podcast network for women's sports. So we'd love to hear from you. And of course, join us again next week, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern, for another episode of the WiSP Sports Desk. Until then, thanks, Nancy. And where will you be, actually, before you go? Where will you be next week?
I'll still be in England, actually.
Okay, that's unusual.
Yeah, it is unusual, but I will be back here, so in England.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks again, Nancy, and we'll join you again next week. Until then, let's have some music to play us out.